I want to be clear about one thing before I tell you any of it. I was not supposed to be there. My survey rotation had ended 6 hours earlier. I was filing tags on derelict hulks in the outer ring of the Dravesh exclusion zone, which is the kind of work they hand you when you have 22 years of service behind you and nobody left to impress. Routine dead ship survey. Ping the hull. Confirm the beacon still transmits. Log the classification code. Go home. 3 ships in the morning. Done by midday. A cup of pressed grain broth and 4 hours of actual sleep before the next shift cycle. The Ardenvos was the 4th ship on my screen, and it was not supposed to be on my screen at all. I had seen its name in the exclusion manifest, the way you see the names of things that are simply not touched. Listed there the way an old landmine is listed on a map. You do not go near it. You note that it exists. You file that it exists. You go away. The Ardenvos have been drifting in that same slow ellipse for 4,000 years. Before the Dravesh Empire. Before the Conclave. Before any structure of authority that anyone alive could name. It was older than the languages used to describe it. Every serious fleet that had ever operated in this sector had sent ships to board it. Boarding parties, cutting torches, breaching charges. Every one of them had come back without entry. Some of them had not come back at all. It was not on my survey list. It had never been on any survey list in the living memory of the station. It appeared on my screen that morning because the beacon ping I sent across the exclusion zone bounced off its hull and returned a code I had never seen before. Not a standard derelict registration, not a distress marker, not a hazard flag. A single structured tone, repeating every 9 seconds, that the old model reader in my survey tender translated as approach permitted. I sent the anomaly to the station. I waited for a response. I waited 17 minutes, which is not an unusual wait for a station handling 400 active survey accounts. Then I did what any 22-year man does when the machine says approach permitted and the station hasn't told him no yet. I adjusted my heading and went. My tender, the Mock, is a 40-footer, a hull tagger. It has 1 docking cradle and 2 fold-down survey arms, and a coffee thermos bolted to the port console that I have not cleaned in approximately 6 years. I approached the Ardenvos from her starboard quarter, the way you approach anything you're not sure about, slowly, with your emergency burn already plotted, watching for anything that changes. Nothing changed. The hull did not light up. No weapon cycled. The ship simply sat there in its long, slow drift, enormous and gray and smooth in a way that no ship of comparable age had any right to be. For 1,000 years of exposure, and she looked as though she had been laid down last season. The metal of her hull, and I'm still not certain it was metal, had a quality to it that I can only describe as patient. The ramp extended before I requested it. That was the first thing that convinced me I had made an error in coming. The second thing was the silence. When a ship of that size extends a boarding ramp and opens a lock, you hear pressure equalization, you hear atmosphere exchanging, you hear the 1,000 small sounds of a system activating after dormancy. There was nothing. The ramp descended to within a meter of my tender's hull, as if the Ardenvos had been waiting for me to park here specifically. And when I stepped across the gap and set my boots on its surface, I could feel a faint warmth through the soles. Not warmth from machinery. Warmth like something that had been sleeping and had, upon sensing me, shifted slightly toward wakefulness. I have spent most of my adult life walking through ships that do not want to be walked through, and I had never once felt a ship notice me. This one noticed me. I did not run. I want to be precise about that. I'm not a brave man in any storybook sense of the word. I am simply a man who is very tired. And when you're very tired and the thing in front of you is strange rather than immediately lethal, the honest response is to keep walking and see what it does next. So I walked. The corridor ahead of me was dark for perhaps 30 meters, and then it was not dark. The illumination that came up along the walls was not electric, and it was not bioluminescent, and it was not anything I had a word for. It was pale and sourceless, and it moved ahead of me, staying perhaps 15 meters ahead at all times, as though it were showing me the way. I followed it for a long time. The ship's interior was vast beyond what its exterior dimensions should have permitted. I passed through a cryo hold that stretched upward beyond the range of my lamp. Row upon row of open berths curved toward a ceiling I could not see. Whatever had slept in them had been gone for a very long time. I passed through a corridor where script I did not recognize was pressed into the walls. Not carved, not painted, but grown into the material as though placed while the hull was still forming. I touched one character with my gloved hand and felt the faint vibration of a 9-second tone pulsing slow and steady inside the wall itself. The light led me to the bridge. I knew it was the bridge because of the chair. There is always a chair on a ship's bridge, and there is always a quality to that chair that distinguishes it from every other seat on the vessel. This one was set at the center of the room on a raised deck, facing a navigation console that ran the full arc of the forward bulkhead, and the console was alive. Every surface was moving in slow patterns that shifted like water finding its own level, illuminated in that same pale, sourceless white. And as I stepped onto the raised deck and stopped, the patterns all changed at once. They oriented toward me. I stood there for a moment. Behind me, somewhere far aft, I heard what I thought was the sound of my own heart. Then the console spoke. It did not speak in any language I knew, and yet I understood it the way you understand a thing that lives in the part of the mind that was built before language. I cannot translate it for you except to tell you what it meant. What it meant was this: every fleet that had ever come to take, every admiral who had come to claim, every empire that had sent its best people to gain the power it believed was stored inside this hull. Every one of them had arrived with a verdict already written, just as shaped to fit what they already wanted to justify. The ship had waited and waited and waited because what it carried was not a weapon and not a treasure and not a seat of power in any sense that those fleets would have recognized. What it carried was a judgment that had never been delivered. 4,000 years ago, someone or something had loaded into this ship's archive the authority to render a verdict on a scale that no single civilization had the standing to claim. Not a weapon, a writ. The final accounting that the builders of this ship had decided the universe was owed, and which could only be released by the one human whose hands were clean. Not clean in the sense of innocent, but clean in the sense of not yet spent. Who had never cashed the authority they had been carrying. Who had come aboard with no verdict already written, no target already chosen, no enemy already named. I am a retired sector guard who files beacon tags and drinks 6-year-old broth from a thermos I can't be bothered to clean. The console said, in a language below language, keeper of the unspent writ. I stood on the bridge of the Arden Voss for a long time after that, with the light moving soft and patient across every surface, waiting for me to understand what I was now holding. When I finally turned and walked back down that pale corridor and across the ramp and into my tender, the ship did not close behind me. The ramp stayed down. The light stayed on. I think it is still open now. My survey report that day listed the Arden Voss as active, attended, classification pending. I have not told anyone at the station what the console said. I'm not entirely sure who I am supposed to tell. What I know is this: 22 years of service, and not once did I use what I was given for something it was not meant for. Every order I could have abused, I did not. Every excess I could have taken, I left where it lay. Not because I was noble, because I was tired, and because the things you carry get heavier when you spend them wrong. Apparently someone knew that. Someone built a ship around waiting for it. I do not know what the writ is for. I do not know when it falls due. I know only that it is mine, and that somewhere in the outer ring of the Dravesh exclusion zone, the oldest ship in recorded history is keeping a light on for the day that I do.